We have Jeremy Saland. He's a criminal defense attorney and former Manhattan prosecutor. We talked to him. Well, I talked to him a lot during the P. Diddy Combs trial, but there's been so much going on legally that we talked to him a lot. Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Overall impressions of this case that's to come tomorrow. Let's start with what are the thoughts on your mind today?
It's hard not to think when I say politically, just think about the ramifications of what we're doing and thinking about the intended consequences and the unintended consequences. For the immediate, I'll use the term gratification. That's not necessarily the right term to use, but you're taking someone who, if true, is someone who's been committing these conspiracy crimes relating to controlled substances, narcotics, cocaine, that there's allegations that he's brought in hundreds of thousands of tons over the course of years to the United States. And that's serious. And how so? By giving cover, by helping getting passports to these co-conspirators, to those people who are trafficking, to these narco gangs, both in Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, as alleged in the indictment. And this was a significant conspiracy, if true. So we have to accept that that is true, that he is a worthy person to pursue and charge with criminal activity. But there's another layer here, right? That layer is, has the president pursued this through the right means unilaterally as opposed to Congress to engage in what really I believe is an act of war, an invasion, even if small, because if anything happened to our nation along those lines, we would certainly say that was an invasion or an act of war. And as a head of a state, was that something that we could do? Just take a head of a state and bring them back. This wasn't a situation, narco-terrorist or not, where American soldiers, American citizens were in the crosshairs, proverbially or literally. So there's a lot moving here. From a legal perspective, there's interesting issues. From a greater political perspective, which is not really why you brought me on here, but I don't think you can avoid it, there are major issues as well.
Right, and let's talk about law since you know so much about this. Taking a head of state of a country and bringing them into the U.S., from what I'm reading, that's against U.S. law. It is against international law. So how's the federal judge, and assuming that it's Hellerman, whose name was on the indictment in 2020, how does a federal judge, do you think, approach this and say, okay, if it's against U.S. law, do we stick to the law, or do we say, well, he's here now, he's no longer president of Venezuela? But is that on its face a fair argument to make, since we made the move while he was still president?
So you have the argument you just raised, is that sort of head of state immunity. So if he was a head of state, like the president of the United States, the president of France, the president of any country, anywhere, Asia, Africa, South America, makes no difference. Generally speaking, they are protected during that term in office. If you read the indictment, which I'm sure you did, there's many efforts, and I don't mean you personally, just sort of a generic statement here. There are many efforts in the drafting of the indictment that really call out the legitimacy, or better stated, the illegitimacy of his position and what he did to enrich himself. So you're sort of piercing that veil. Many people may have heard that term before, of that head of state veil. We can look at sort of at a blueprint of this. If the name sounds familiar to Manuel Noriega, from Panama, from I think it was '89. I was a freshman in high school back then. I think that was the right year. Anyway, there's a blueprint here where this can happen. And once you're on American soil, the courts will likely say, you're here now. Whether that extraction and the way it happened was proper, you are here now. And now we're going to pursue on the four corners of that indictment against you, whether it's legal or not. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to win the day for him, but certainly that's something that's going to be in the arsenal of his defense team to make that complaint, to make that challenge.
I think part of the scary part of that, Jeremy, is if the same argument is used, many U.S. leaders have been accused of one thing or another, one time or another, if they're traveling abroad, if they get snatched up, does this open the precedent for another country to say, well, it wasn't wholly legal grabbing them there, but now that we got them, our laws go into effect. So that's something that I think Americans need to keep in mind, if you agree with that. And then what do you see on the indictment, looking at those charges? Are those very, very difficult charges to prove? Do you believe that based on the indictment in 2020 and what has happened since, that the Southern District of New York is going to have an easy time prosecuting this case?
Well, I'm glad you're bringing it up that this is a superseding indictment, Arthur. It's a great point that there already was a piece of this already has happened. It's been ongoing. And some of those defendants have pleaded out or are no longer in the case, and there's that second part of it, meaning this new secondary indictment, this other indictment. So the prosecution has already been doing their homework. The real question is going to be, what is this new superseding that brought in Juan Flores, his wife, Maduro's wife? What is that new evidence there? What is the evidence to support that he was involved with these other gangs for the superseding indictment? And I think if I'm the defense, one thing I might consider is there is we'll call it a speedy trial clock of 70 days, generally speaking. It can be waived for prosecutors to bring their case. There's an argument to be made if I'm the defense to say, you know what, I'm probably going to lose many of these applications and motions that I make for dismissal, because that's a pretty low bar for the prosecution to have that level of evidence. I may say, you know what, they didn't know that this was coming. Think about this for a second. If I'm a prosecutor, I'm working with the FBI, I'm working with the NYPD, I'm working with the Secret Service, and I'm saying to them, go out and get our guy, and then I'm ready when you bring him back. Here, these prosecutors presumably had no idea President Trump was arranging to snatch Maduro up and bring him back to the United States. They may not have all their ducks in a row. So there may be a defense procedurally for the defense to say, let's go to trial, let's push this forward, and they may not win everything, but the prosecution may not be ready to bring all this additional evidence ready to go for trial within 70 days, even if there's a loss here. So it's something that the defense might want to consider. And I will add one other thing, and I apologize for taking too much time rambling here. There may be a thing too where you have the president now, or acting president, whatever she is in Venezuela, saying that Maduro is our president. Is there a negotiation to be had? Is this something that we see the president of the United States says, you give us X in Venezuela, what we want, and we'll give your former president or current president Y as a sentence? I would not be shocked if there's some sort of negotiation.
Right. Jeremy, what do you expect will happen tomorrow? Noon in Southern District tomorrow. What do you expect will happen tomorrow? And how long what is the next thing in this case? How long can it take to play out?
So I think tomorrow is going to be fairly mundane. Pleading not guilty. What might be an interesting question, will his defense, or will he say, I don't recognize this court's authority, and the court will enter a plea of not guilty for him? There may be a conference date put forth, but it's going to be pretty mundane and boring. All the back stuff has already happened in terms of pictures and prints and things like that. But a trajectory of a case could be months. This, if it plays out with all that's moving pieces, it could be closer to a year or more potentially. But again, it depends on the defense tactic. But tomorrow should be pretty quick and pretty boring. Enter a plea of not guilty. He's not getting out. It's not going to be bail. He'll be sitting either in Metropolitan Detention Center or wherever they decide to house him.
Well, it could be boring tomorrow. It certainly hasn't been a boring weekend, and you don't ramble. We learn when you talk. So, Jeremy Saland, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it tonight.
My pleasure.
Well, we will take a 2-minute break here. When we come back, we're going to talk to political analyst Trip Yang about Mamdani's soon-to-be completed week as the mayor of New York City. That's going to be right after this break.